So apparently it's already been 10 long months since OnePlus launched the excellent Nord 2 mid-range smartphone. 10 months, almost a year. How? What is time? Where am I? And because it's been almost a year, OnePlus has now launched a successor to the Nord 2, but it's not quite enough of an upgrade to warrant a full jump to the OnePlus Nord 3 title, so what we have here is the OnePlus Nord 2T. It's kind of an interim device that sports a lot of the same hardware found in the original Nord 2, but with a few little upgrades here and there, such as the performance and also the battery tech. Now here in the UK, the base model of the OnePlus Nord 2T will cost you £369, that's for 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage. If you want to upgrade that to 12 gigs of RAM and double the storage, it's an extra £100, that's 469 quid. The phone will also be released across Europe, but if you live in North America, sucks to be you, I'm afraid. Not coming to you guys just yet, so go have a bit of a cry about that one. Anyway, let's whip it on out of the box, take you on a full-on tour of the hardware, the software, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So let's have a gander at what you'll find inside of this dark and mysterious box. Well, slap my thighs and call me Barbara if you don't get a OnePlus Nord 2T in there. There's also a rather beefy 80-watt SuperVOOC charge adapter bundled in there as well. Like, at the rate these things are growing, soon you're going to need an entire room just to charge your phone. And as always, OnePlus has bundled its bright red USB cable in there. Good to see it sticking with that. And you've also got a protective sheath bundled in there as well to keep your OnePlus Nord 2T safe from harm. Quite a jazzy one as well, adds a nice little pattern to the back end of the phone. And you got the usual welcome letter from the Nord team as well. If you want to read that, just freeze here, I guess. And that's everything that you'll find inside the box. So now let's check out the OnePlus Nord 2T. Okay, so let's start with the design. And I gotta say, I've jumped straight to this thing from the Galaxy S22 Ultra, which I've just done a 3-month review of. And in comparison, this feels so beautifully compact. Like the OnePlus Nord 2, this T model is a 6.4 inches, so pretty dinky as far as 2022 smartphones go. And it's helped along by the fact that the bezels are reasonably skinny surrounding that display. And while a lot of smartphones are now rocking that flat edge design, which suddenly seems incredibly popular, thankfully OnePlus has gone with pleasingly curved edges and corners with this thing. So if you want to talk hand feel, top-notch hand feel through and through. Bit of a tough nut as well, the old OnePlus Nord 2T. You've got a pre-installed screen protector. You've also got Gorilla Glass 5 plating for that front end and the back end as well. You can pick this phone up in a couple of different designs. This here is the super shiny Jade Fog version, so shiny you can actually see yourself in it. Make sure you're looking dapper as always. Alternatively, you can also grab it in Grey Shadow, which apparently is a sandstone style backend, similar to the original OnePlus, so harnessing that nostalgia joy for long-term fans. Gotta say, I do quite like the bluey grey finish here on the Jade Fog version, but the shiny finish does mean that it picks up greasy prints and scuffy, grim stuff all a bit too easily. You don't get an IP rating for water and dust resistance, unfortunately, unlike the Samsung Galaxy A53, for instance, but the OnePlus Nord 2T seems to be pretty splash resistant, doesn't seem to be too bothered by rain or just, if you spill your drink on it. Now on the software side, it is the latest, freshest Android 12 on here. OnePlus is usually pretty good at getting the latest version of Android on its smartphones, with a bit of OxygenOS 12.1 slapped on top. And as you can see there, I've got the base model with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. Quite a lot of that used up, but that's because I've been downloading Genshin Impact and everything as well, which is now 15 friggin' gigs all on its lonesome. And if you are planning on downloading Genshin Impact and lots of movies, music, etc, I'd suggest maybe going for the 256 gig model, because there's no space in that double-sided SIM tray for a micro SD memory card, just 2 SIM cards. Now OxygenOS does definitely have a different vibe these days now that it's been blended with ColorOS essentially, but OnePlus staples like the shelf are still present and correct, but now pulled down from the right side of the screen like so. The UI hasn't been changed up too much from stock Android as usual, so you've got your Google Discover feed, you've got your apps tray, but also more customization as well. So if we dive on into the home settings, you can change the grid layout, you've got some gesture support in here as well. And while this smartphone is relatively compact, I do still appreciate any one-handed help like the icon pull-down gesture support. If you hit up the settings menu, dive on into personalizations, you can have a good bugger about with OxygenOS as well and set it up just the way you like. You've got the usual wide variety of always-on displays, including the slightly freaky canvas option. And this can just generate an always-on display from any of the photos in your album. I do like the way it captures the luxurious thickness of my eyebrows. Otherwise, you can also populate the always on display with your very own Bitmoji, which is basically a far too happy cartoon version of yourself. I'll tell you bloody what, that is not me in the mornings. For a start, I live in the UK, so there's certainly no smiling sun shining down on me, and if any birds came within my general vicinity in the morning, they would be scarpering pretty bloody fast. I'd be hoying the toothpaste at the wee feathered buggers. This one, however, much more like it. I do enjoy a beer that's the size of my head, and this one's probably me after hearing the news that James Corden is returning to the UK. And as usual, you can mess around with the UI colours, you can play around with the fonts, the fingerprint animation, all kinds of shenanigans. And as usual, OnePlus has stuck to its pledge to give you a couple of years of OS upgrades and 3 years of security upgrades with OnePlus Nord 2T as well, so great to see it sticking with that. As for unlocking the wee bugger, well, it is an in-display fingerprint sensor, just your basic optical effort as with most mid-range smartphones, but touch wood seems pretty responsive, pretty fast to act. It's not a massive fan of when your mitts are a bit wet, a bit grubby, but that's again pretty standard for an optical sensor. And if you can't use that fingerprint sensor, just tap the power button and you've got face unlock support here on the Nord 2T as well. And again, seems pretty responsive, pretty happy to work even in low light conditions. It doesn't look like OnePlus has really changed up much when it comes to the display tech versus the original Nord 2, and that's fine by me. It's a 6.43-inch AMOLED panel with Full HD Plus resolution, nice and crisp, especially given it's a bit more compact compared with a lot of rivals. Because it's OLED, you've got nice wide viewing angles, you've got strong contrast on here as well. You've actually got full HDR10 Plus support for when you're streaming in the likes of Netflix. Really punchy, slap you in the face color reproduction as well, especially if you leave it on the default vivid settings, which I have done because I rather like it. And yeah, the selfie cam orifice does slightly intrude on the action when you go full screen for your gaming, your movies, whatever, but at least it has been budged away in a corner, so it's about as out of the way as it could possibly be. And no issues with the brightness on top brightness levels. I can see what is going on even when it is actually sunny outside. That does occasionally happen here in Blighty. And OnePlus has apparently slapped a new ambient light sensor on there as well, and certainly the auto brightness I've had no issues with in the sort of 48 hours I've been playing with this phone. And as with last year's model, you do have support for 90Hz refresh as well. It is stuck on 90Hz by default, but you can drop it back down to 60Hz if you'd rather preserve battery life. And like the previous gen, and like many mid-range smartphones, you do have a stereo speaker setup here on the OnePlus Nord 2T as well. But does it suck? Clutch. Not that the Infinix Note 12 VIP is uncomfortable to hold, and thankfully isn't too chunky, even though the display section does kind of jut up above the edging. That's not bad at all. It certainly packs a punch when you bump it all the way up to the maximum volumes, quite loud and well balanced sound as well. Sometimes the top speaker can be a little bit weak in comparison with the bottom. Of course, the audio output is still quite tinny, so definitely best reserved for just, kick it back with a YouTube video or whatever. If you do actually want to enjoy some music, I would highly suggest connecting some headphones. Unfortunately, there's no headphone jack, of course, here on the Nord 2T, so you'll have to dongle it up. Otherwise, you do have full Bluetooth 5.2 support. I've had bugger all issues with the Bluetooth streaming. You got full support for LDAC and aptX HD, etc., same as the OnePlus Nord 2. You do have that direct audio tuner on there as well, which on your behalf can just change up the audio settings based on what you're actually up to. Now, performance is one area where there has been changes. The Nord 2 rocked a 7nm Dimensity 1200 AI chipset. That has been upgraded here on the Nord 2T to a 6nm Dimensity 1300. And this basically promises improved frame rate stability and other gaming optimization, so good news if you are a gamer. Certainly the everyday performance has been absolutely fine here on the Nord 2T, no issues there whatsoever. Apps just load up when you tap them. Benchmarking results not massively impressive, gotta say. The multi-core score has jumped up a bit from the Dimensity 1200 AI, but the single core score has actually dropped a bit. But frankly, benchmarking, it's all a load of bollocks anyway. To truly test out the grunt of the OnePlus Nord 2T, I spent a good chunk of my morning having my head staved in by various goblin-y type things in Genshin Impact. And I gotta say, the performance was silky smooth throughout. I rarely saw any judders, any drops in the frame rate, and that was just on the balanced performance settings as well before I bumped it up to the pro gamer mode. Yeah, this phone coped really, really well, even under the pressure of Genshin Impact, which is a proper memory guzzler, that's for sure. I had no issues when it came to overheating or anything either. The back of the phone got ever so slightly toasty after, a good half hour, 45 minutes of gaming, but nowhere near to the level where I was worried about throttling or having my fingers burnt off. And that display perfectly suited to gaming as well. I find it nice and responsive, perfectly sensitive, although you can actually change up the sensitivity in the excellent OxygenOS gaming tools. I do find the gaming menu slightly more awkward to pull out these days than it used to be, but it is packing all of the features you would need and hope for, including notifications, blocking, the ability to open up WhatsApp and Messenger in-game, etc, etc. So overall great stuff, and bear in mind this is the 8GB model as well, not the 12GB top-end version. And you still got your 5G support, you still got your Wi-Fi 6 support as well, so connectivity has not been an issue at all, whether I've been at home on my home Wi-Fi or out and about rocking that 5G. Now on the battery front, there's also been changes for the OnePlus Nord 2T. It's the same size as before, 4,500 mAh capacity, and I found that this definitely does the job. Even if you're a fairly demanding user, I got around 6 hours of screen on time on this bad boy yesterday from a full charge before it finally died. And that included a bit of gaming, a bit of video streaming, a bit of music streaming in the background with the screen turned off, and some good old camera play as well. However, while the OnePlus Nord 2 was already pretty nippy at recharging with 65 watt charging speed support, you've now got that upgraded to 80 watt fast charging support here on the OnePlus Nord 2T, the same as the OnePlus 10 flagship smartphone. So yeah, plug it in and it'll be back up to full in a jiffy, but sadly no wireless charging support here. So last up, let's chat cameras, and if you are at all familiar with the original OnePlus Nord 2, then you're going to get a serious case of deja vu because it's basically the same setup. So yeah, that does mean you have the exact same 50 megapixel Sony IMX766 camera sensor as before. That comes with optical image stabilization built in, which is always great to see on a mid-range smartphone. You've got the usual AI mode shenanigans if you want to enhance your scene. I prefer more natural output. And of course, it uses pixel binning to brighten up a scene, add a little bit more detail when there is lower light, but you can bump it up to the 50 megapixel maximum resolution if you like. Just a quick tap, nice and easy. And unsurprisingly, the photo results that I've been getting so far with the OnePlus Nord 2T, very similar to the OnePlus Nord 2 with the same hardware setup. Once again, it can deal pretty well with strong contrast and lighting. Color reproduction is fairly natural, you've got plenty of detail packed into every snap. Low light performance, really strong as well, helped along by that upgraded MediaTek Dimensity chipset. I found that you still get plenty of detail packed in there. The focus certainly doesn't struggle when there's dim light. And as always, OnePlus has chucked in a variety of bonus features, including an excellent portrait mode. This tends to do a great job even with kids who are moving about the place. Nice, crisp, clean results with a lovely bokeh style background effect. You've got the usual Pro mode on board as well if you want to actually manually play around with any of the settings. And also slapped on the back end of the OnePlus Nord 2T, you'll find a basic 8 megapixel ultra wide angle shooter, which will do the job if you do need a more pulled back view. And that final lens is just a bog standard 2 megapixel mono sensor. If you like to shoot loads of home movies, well, the OnePlus Nord 2T certainly seems to be up to snuff. You can shoot at 30 or 60 frames per second if you keep it at 1080p, otherwise you can bump it up to 4K, although then you are limited to just 30 FPS. And again, just for your everyday shenanigans, the OnePlus is up to the job. I found that the detail levels were fine, the video isn't thrown off by strong contrast or lighting particularly. The stabilization is alright if you want to move around and shoot at the same time as well. In low light things do get a bit grainy, but again, as expected. And then last up, flip to the front and you've got a 32 megapixel Sony IMX615 sensor for your selfie snaps. Just don't talk and snap at the same time because otherwise this will happen. And if you want to stare at some photos of my face, well, here you go. Here's my face as captured by the OnePlus Nord 2T. Hooray. And yes, of course, you can also shoot video of your face using that selfie camera, although this does top off at full HD resolution. There's no 4K option, but audio pickup seems absolutely fine, even in slightly blustery conditions, not too perturbed. And there you have it. That, in a lovely little nutshell, is the OnePlus Nord 2T. As you can see, not much of an upgrade at all over the original OnePlus Nord 2. So if you already have that smartphone, you definitely do not even want to be considering buying this bad boy. But if you don't have the OnePlus Nord 2 already, you want a respectable all-round mid-range smartphone for under £400, well, this will definitely do the job. You've got some solid camera tech on there, very respectable gaming performance and battery life, and strong media chops as well. So that right there is what I think. What do you guys reckon? Be great to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Please do poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a bloody lovely rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.